Hey there, I'm Harry Enten, and today we're not just running the numbers on the war in Iran, we are running all the numbers on the war in Iran, and you won't see this on television. Let's start off by talking about two key terms that basically before this war began, nobody was really talking about, and you might not have even heard of them. We're talking about Kharg Island and the Strait of Hormuz, of course, very much having to do with oil that is exported by Iran, and you can see her Google searches in March up like a rocket. I mean, my goodness gracious, record highs reached for Kharg Island. Look at this. Google searches up over 20,000%. That's insane versus a month ago. And then the Strait of Hormuz up 1,900% versus a month ago. Again, record highs in Google dating all the way back since 2004. So if you hadn't heard of either Kharg Island or the Strait of Hormuz before the war in Iran, guess what? You were not alone. Now, I mentioned, of course, oil. That is why we're talking about Kharg Island and the Strait of Hormuz, and we're talking about gas prices here in the United States. And we are talking about increases that, frankly, we have never seen, at least over the last 35 years. Take a look here at gas prices. Okay, right now, the largest 4-week gas price increase since at least 1991. You have to go all the way back since the Bills played in their first Super Bowl to find increases this high. We're talking about up 33% just over the last 4 weeks. My goodness gracious. In fact, I went back through the record books. We're talking about an increase of $1 over just a 4-week period for the first time ever. The first time ever. That is why the Strait of Hormuz and Kharg Island are so important, because essentially what has gone on, of course, is that the Strait of Hormuz has closed and it has choked off the oil supply that is heading out of Iran, and that, of course, has driven up gas prices here in the United States of America. But that is not all that's been going on. Take a look here. This, I think, really sort of gives the game away. Look at this. Economic measures since the Iran war began. Well, we spoke about gas prices, right, being up 33%. But look at the Dow Jones. Down it goes through the floor. We're talking about down 8%. Down 8% since the war in Iran began. And guess what? That means, along with the downflow that we saw earlier on, just before the Iran war started, that the Dow Jones has actually entered correction territory. It's entered correction territory. So oil prices climb ever higher, but the rest of the economy has been suffering. It has been suffering because of the war in Iran. Of course, we had all those years, right? All those years in which the stock market had been climbing. But basically, what we've seen over the last month and change is that stocks are finally entering correction territory, which if you have a 401k like myself, that's not exactly welcome news. Of course, if you own oil, it's actually quite welcome news that you've seen gas prices go up and oil prices climb ever higher. Now, of course, one of the key things that folks have spoken about, right, that we've been hearing about, is potentially ground troops entering Iran, specifically Kharg Island, because of these gas prices climbing higher. Well, that is not something that the American people want at all. I mean, you rarely see polling data like this. I mean, just take a look here. Okay, this is a recent AP North poll. U.S. troops on the ground in Iran. Look at this. We're talking about 12%. That is less than a bar mitzvah. Less than a bar mitzvah support it. 12%. Of course, if you don't know, you get your bar mitzvah at age 13. I had mine. It was an interesting experience. But look at this. We're talking about 3 in 5. 3 in 5 Americans already oppose ground troops in Iran, and even among Republicans who stick through it with Donald Trump through thick and thin, just a fifth of Republicans right now support ground troops in Iran, about half oppose. So even among Donald Trump's base, we see real opposition to troops on the ground in Iran, even at places like Kharg Island, to help open up that oil supply chain, right? So this might make you ask the question. It obviously makes me beg the question. How has this war had an impact on Donald Trump, and how are Americans viewing Donald Trump on the war in Iran? It ain't good, folks. It ain't good. I mean, look at these numbers, and I want you to take a look. We have a comparison point here. War net approval rating a month in. The Iraq war, of course, that was George W. Bush. We're talking about April in 2003, and we're talking about the Iran war now with Donald Trump. Look at this. Look how popular Bush was when it came to the war in Iran a month in. Now, of course, the war in Iraq, excuse me, not the war in Iran, the war in Iraq a month in. Look, his approval rating on the war would go way down, but his net approval rating a month in, look at this. It was plus 56 points. Plus 56 points with his net approval rating. It gave him a real boost in his approval rating. There really was a rally around the flag event for George W. Bush back in 2003. Compare that to Donald Trump. This isn't on another planet, folks. This is an entirely other, different galaxy. I mean, look at this. He's 28 points underwater. Underwater. He's down there with the Titanic, Donald Trump is, when it comes to how people view him when it comes to the war in Iran. Well, George W. Bush was up there in the clouds when it came to the war in Iraq. So this is just not a good starting place for Donald Trump, even a month in. And of course, this is having a big impact, or at least a negative impact, on Donald Trump's overall popularity. Because, take a look here, take a look at Donald Trump's overall net approval rating. This is the lowest of his term, the lowest of his second term. We're talking about minus 17 points, 17 points underwater. And unlike in Donald Trump's first term, in which he was negative basically throughout his entire term, Trump actually started off in positive territory here in his second term. But now he's at the lowest point of his second term. But there's an even bigger comparison to be made, okay? So obviously Trump was elected once back in 2016, then he took a 4-year break, and then, of course, he's serving his second term, and it's his second presidency. So I went back and I looked at all of the presidents at this point in a presidency, all of them at this point in a presidency, and guess what? Donald Trump is the lowest ever at this point in a presidency, lower than Joe Biden, lower than Jimmy Carter, lower than Ronald Reagan. He's lower than all of them at this point in a presidency. You know, you can make any sort of swimming comparison you want. Maybe you want to make a comparison with a diver like Greg Louganis. Maybe you want to make a swimming comparison, Michael Phelps. Maybe if you're me, like an old Jewish soul, you want to make a comparison with Mark Spitz. Either way, he is very much down there. Now, of course, this may in fact be having an impact on the midterm elections, right? Donald Trump is not on the ballot come November, right? You have a 2-term limit here in the United States of America, so he can't be reelected to a 3rd term come 2028, unless, of course, the Constitution gets changed. But we do have a midterm election coming up in November, and this shows that at least those who are putting their money where their mouth is see that the Republicans' chances of holding on to the Senate, they have gone down. What is occurring in the White House, those who are putting their money where their mouth is don't expect it to stay in the White House. They expect it to spread out across the electoral map. Chance the GOP wins the Senate in 2026. Pre-Iran war, look at this. It was at 59%. It was at 59%, about 3 in 5. Now, what you see is it's basically a 50-50 split when it comes to the United States Senate. Republicans, maybe if you want to use the word slightly favored, I really consider this dead heat territory. We're talking about a 52% chance, which of course is amazing given the electoral map in which Republicans really are playing on a good playing field for them. Democrats really don't have that many pickup opportunities if this were a neutral year. Maybe Maine, maybe North Carolina. But if you look at some of the individual markets, you've seen some real movement towards the Democrats, away from the Republicans, in states like Alaska, states like Ohio, places that Donald Trump won by double digits back in 2024. But now it looks like Democrats have a real shot. Of course, the war in Iran is not just having implications here in the United States. Of course, it is really something that impacts the world at large. And let's take a look at how some of the U.S. allies are viewing this war, and most of them do not view it favorably. What are we talking about? Just take a look here. I mean, look at this. Net approval rating U.S. military action in Iran. Canada, Japan, the United Kingdom. Look at these numbers. Look at these net approval ratings. They are all under 30 points, at least 30 points underwater. The UK, 34 points underwater. Japan, 73 points. When do you ever see anything that's 73 points underwater? I guess maybe stealing candy from a baby, but this is just absolutely atrocious. How about in Canada? 38 points underwater. These, of course, are key U.S. allies, and none of the people, very few of the people in these countries actually like what's going on. And if you were going to make a comparison to the war in Iraq, of course, I can't believe it. I'm counting up the years in my head. It's 23 years ago at this point. My God, you could have a kid who could already vote, drive a car, smoke, have alcohol legally. But 23 years ago, in each of these countries, the war in Iraq was considerably more popular than this war in Iran is right now. And that is a key reason why you're not really seeing any of these countries really willing to help out when it comes to the war in Iran. But there is one place where the war in Iran is popular, and that is Israel. Take a look here. I mean, just take a look at the comparison here. Israelis satisfied with the war in Iran results, the achievements that are going on. Israel is a rare country where you see the majority of the country's population at least seeing the results so far favorably, seeing the achievements so far favorably. Look at this. 66% of Israelis, at least according to a Channel 12 poll over there in Israel, said that they were satisfied with the Iran war's results, the achievements so far. And you might say, okay, you know, Bibi Netanyahu, he has opponents there, right? Bibi Netanyahu, many people worldwide don't like. But even among Bibi Netanyahu's opponents, those, the opposition to Bibi Netanyahu, want to vote for another party. Look at this. Those who oppose Bibi Netanyahu, even there you see the majority right now satisfied with the war in Iran results so far, the achievements going on. So Israel kind of on an island of its own in terms of how the war is being viewed much more popularly in Israel than it is here in the United States, and certainly in places like the UK, Japan, and Canada. We'll see if there are any electoral implications down the line in Israel. Obviously, we have a midterm election coming up in the States where I do think there could be implications if, in fact, the war in Iran drags on ever further. So this was me running all the numbers this week on the war in Iran. I hope you enjoyed it, but I want to make sure that going forward, what should we dig into next year? What should we dig into next? Drop it in the comments section. I'll take a look, and we'll see if we're able to meet again.